My name is Chris Coutinho. I'm Kenyan. I live in Nairobi. I am a Laudato Si animator. I'll put that out there right at the top. I don't know if you've heard of this of the film The Letter. The Letter came out in October the 4th of 2022, and it basically brings to life the encyclical Laudato Si in a very beautiful way, and of course it features Pope Francis. And anyway, there have been screenings of the film, worldwide, and I have hosted 3 mega screenings here at Westgate Cinema here in Nairobi. I've hosted a screening for you guys here at Pauline's in the hall, and I've done a few others like that. Now, at each of these screenings, there's been an interaction, audience interaction, just discussing the film and whatever comes to mind and all of that. At the end of the session, though, I part with this story. I leave the audience with a story. It's a story about gratitude, of deep appreciation of countless blessings we received, but that we either ignore, misuse, or even abuse. But it's also a story of hope. The story is called Pennies from Heaven. And it goes like this. A long time ago, 1,000,000 years BC, the best things in life were absolutely free. But no one appreciated a sky that was always blue. And no one congratulated a moon that was always new. So it was planned that they would vanish now and then. And you must pay before you get them back again. That's what storms were made for, and you shouldn't be afraid for. Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me. That song was written the year Pope Francis was born. And I made a vow to myself that I'm going to sing to him this song for his 90th birthday. That has not come to be, but now you've heard it. And yeah, I don't need to say more. So that was what I will part with. Originally, when I left school at St. Mary's, I was meant to study musical theater. I won a part scholarship to go to San Diego, University of San Diego, to study musical theater. Unfortunately, that was a part scholarship. The balance of, the fees were just way too much that my parents could afford. My dad was a policeman in the Kenya Police Force. My mom was a secretary. And it was just, it was no way. So unfortunately, that was shelved. I still wanted to pursue that, but long story short, that was put aside, I ended up going into aviation in the airline industry. I started flying for Pan American World Airways as a purser. I ended up joining Delta. Long story short, even though this career in aviation, where I then got far-flung, worldwide, I was based in various locations around the world. I still continued doing theater work or singing, here in Kenya at the National Theater, at the Phoenix Theater, various theaters here. I would take time off from work, fly down for rehearsals, go back, come back for the performances. That was the kind of thing that I was doing. But because that really is my core, my passion. I sing whenever I'm invited to. Mainly, it has been singing the Ave Maria for weddings, funeral masses, christenings, baptisms, whatever. So that's the kind of thing I do. My genre of singing is kind of varied. I'm more of a jazz performer, I guess. I love the old music. Okay, that's my genre. Ballads, the song that I just sung, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'll sing anything that appeals to me, any shape or form. Yeah. Whatever I'm singing has to be for a purpose. Even if it's just one song, there has to be meaning. I'm not just going to sing any random thing or. Third quarter of 2014, I remember just hearing rumblings about the Pope Francis coming to Africa. And I remember the first thing that I had heard of was him visiting Uganda. And this was last quarter of 2014, okay? And I remember then I thought to myself, wait a minute, if he's coming to Uganda, he's got to be coming to Kenya. I mean, there's just no way he's not going to come to Kenya. So that's what I thought. Anyway, that was at the back of my head. And as that went, as that period went on, 2014 now, I had this, the idea came, God, you know what, if he does come to Kenya, I would love to sing for him, So that seed was sown back then, just the desire to want to sing. Anyway, coming into 2015 now, the news and the buzz about this visit, becomes more louder, and long story short, I remember it was late October. I got a call from my boss, and she was in Berlin at the time. She said, "Hey, Chris, just expect a call from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." I'm like, okay. And okay, I got the call, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs calls me up, and I forget what it was, but they said, yeah, we need you to come down to Kasarani. We want to hear you guys, and so now this is coming into November now, okay? That's the month that Pope Francis is arriving, because I forget the date. His first day was the 25th, I think it was, November, okay? So you can imagine now the kind of strain and stress, excitement, and everything that's going on, okay? Because we're rehearsing in Korogocho, I had taken time off from work, I would go down to St. John's, rehearsing with whoever. Now, bear in mind as well, the orchestra members, because some of them at uni, some of them at school, not everybody could rehearse at the same time. Dan, the nyatiti player, was, I think at the time, in Uganda. He was either in contact, online or just by phone, rehearsing with other orchestra men. That was the kind of craziness that we were all going through, okay? And bear in mind, still no real confirmation that we're doing this. Okay, so it was not until the evening of the day before we got confirmation, and it was about say 4 in the afternoon, and we're tired, we're exhausted, and we're the only ones now at Kasarani. Yeah, we're the ones, and now we hadn't rehearsed fully yet. We hadn't rehearsed, with the sound equipment that was going to be there, because this was being broadcast globally, okay, not just here. We hadn't done any of that, and what was really crushing to the orchestra member was, that late evening, we got word that the instruments they had to leave behind for security purposes. So we had to make arrangements for a special area there, that all the instruments, everybody had to leave their instruments there. That was a big, that was a crazy ordeal. Long story short, we ended up leaving at about, say, 6:30 that evening, being told that we have to report back the next morning at 5:30. Okay, so now, at 5:30, Pope Francis, now that event was scheduled to start at 10 o'clock. Okay, and we're thinking, wait a minute, 5:30, 10 o'clock, okay, fine. Once he came in, into the stadium, he'd settled down, and I think there was one more address. I think it was a young lady by the name of Lynette. She made some kind of address, and then it was us. Despite all the rehearsals, how it was meant to be, there was meant to be, and this was actually a last-minute decision, the day before. It was the orchestra director who said, you know what, maybe we should have a little bit of an instrumental introduction, and then we go into the whole, sequence. So that was something new. Long story short, that moment, someone came in too early. I think it was the flutist, the Kiri, he started playing the flute, and he was not meant to. And that kind of threw everybody off for a moment, and I could sense that. But we kind of just, refocused, and we, there's all that stress and anxiety at the same time, that's going on. So, yeah, this was, after it all, joy, and now we've done it, but up until that time, and even the actual, it was mega stress. I can't put it in any other way, shape, or form. I mean, it really was. And, now when looking back, that idea of, oh my God, this is not just the stadium, but this is broadcast worldwide. I'm like, oh God, Yeah, so, so picture inside the stadium, okay? Now this is in the field, okay? And we were right at the top of the field, okay? And then you've got the track, right? So we're kind of like at the top of the field, you've got the track, and then beyond the track was the podium where Pope Francis and all the dignitaries were there, okay? You had all our parliamentarians, I remember on my left, and then you had Pope Francis, all his entourage, and then you had all the bishops, all our Kenyan bishops, on this side. So that, and that was the proximity of him to us. So I wager about no more, around say 50 meters. I mean, we were that close. I remember Monday morning, I have a cousin that's visiting, and I was meant to be meeting her for lunch, but it was mid-morning, I get a call from my barber, my kinyozi, his name is Macharia, and I'm like, why is Macharia calling me now? And I forget what time it was, but he said, Chris, have you, and then the next thing I'm looking at my phone, and I just saw, what I saw, and I was just, it was like, it was the wind out of my sails, just kind of like, knocked. That was when I first heard, about Pope Francis passing. And I remember just this weekend, I forget, I was answering somebody, or I was asked a question, and I said, I've lost a foster grandpa, because really that was my connection with him. He was like my granddad, I never met my paternal grandparent. I knew my maternal granddad very well, because growing up with him, from childhood right till as an adult. But then he passed. But Pope Francis, though, he really became. We never met, but he became like my granddad. So Monday morning, when I got that news, that was a shock, really genuinely. And I canceled everything that I had remember I told you I was meant to be visiting or rather seeing my visiting cousin, but I broke down and Monday was a tough day. I'm not gonna lie. It really was. Oh, thank you. I mean, this is an honor for me to be interviewed about all of this. But thank you so much.